the meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for the pledge? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chief, please call the roll, please.
Butler?
Here.
Jordan?
Here.
Lipscomb?
Here.
Oakridge? Here. Smith? Crash?
Here.
Vincenzo?
Here. Okay, Mr. Smith did call me. He got tied up at work with auditors. He was going to try his best to get here, but he told me if he didn't get here by 7, he probably wouldn't make it. So that's where he's at, and unfortunately got tied up at work. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the minutes from the September 18th meeting. There is a printing error on the agenda where it says the 17th, but the minutes themselves say 18th. That is correct. So does anyone not receive their copy of the minutes for the 18th meeting? Does anyone have any questions on those minutes? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes as okay, well, I'll take a roll call vote.
Butler?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Lipscomb?
Yes.
Oakridge?
Yes.
Thrash?
Yes.
Vincenzo?
Yes.
All members are
Okay, the minutes for the September 18th meeting have been approved. Okay, the next one is the minutes for the September 25th special meeting. Has anyone who did not receive their copy of the minutes for the special meeting? Does anyone have any question on those? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes. Second? Let's see. Take a roll call vote.
Butler?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Lipscomb?
Yes.
Oakridge? Yes. Thrash?
Yes.
Vincenzo?
Yes.
All members are there.
Okay, the minutes for the September 25th meeting have also been approved. Okay, we have 2 people not here this evening aside from Mr. Smith. That's Mr. Greenwood, who's on vacation, and our finance director, who is not here on a medical issue. So that's where they're at. Okay, the first thing we'll do is move on then to the mayor's report.
Thank you, Jim. Give a brief report because I have a proclamation. I did attend junior sports meeting on Tuesday, September 19th. We talked about a lot of things concerning the baseball fields. I feel very positive about them. I know Beth will probably say something more in her report, so I'll end it at that. Met with Mike Barkhorst, who's from the Ohio Municipal League, and it was a follow-up to my being chosen and attending the strategic leadership class in July. Also went to the chamber lunch, which was sponsored by Wheeling Hospital. He had a chance to hear Dr. Tarvik, who's an orthopedic surgeon, and spoke about the new procedures and especially knee replacement. That's good news for me and my old knees. Met with Eric Gay and Jeremy regarding some of the rec center activities going on. Met with Jeremy regarding city issues that may come up while he is on a much-deserved vacation. Attended the chamber dinner. And again, congratulations to the businesses and individuals who were lauded at this dinner. I think one of our citizens, Kathy Wood, wanted to say something about the car show from this week.
I don't know if everybody knew that we had a cruise.
Stand up, stand up.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so comfortable.
Kathy, you need to go to the mic. So.
To the mic so that they
So yesterday I was announcing a hot dog contest, doing all I could with this microphone, and I'm not very good at it. But we had a cruise in downtown yesterday, and it was a blast. It was so much fun. I just want to thank the city for helping with that, because you closed off the streets. We really needed that. It wouldn't have worked out without, and it was just awesome. Some of you may know, maybe not, we did have a Christmas in July. We had a Cinco de Mayo. The downtown is trying very, very hard to be bigger and to bring people downtown and to, you know, call attention to some of the great businesses that we have in town that maybe otherwise go unnoticed. So I would ask that you pay attention and, you know, see when things are coming and come on down and join us. Again, thank you to the city very, very much. Please continue to support us with that. It's really making a big difference. Anything you can do with any sort of signage or bringing other people down or whatever we need to do to make our downtown healthy, because a thriving downtown benefits everybody. And thank you again, all of you, for your help with that.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you. I'm glad that my Kia wasn't old enough to be an old car, although it's getting I also have a proclamation for those who don't know. It is Public Power Week, and whereas the City of St. Clairsville places high value on the benefits of local control of utility services, and therefore operates a community-owned, not-for-profit electric utility, whereas because we are customers and owners of St. Clairsville Light and Power Department and have a direct say in utility operations and policies, whereas Light and Power Department is a valuable community asset that contributes to the well-being of local citizens through energy efficiency, customer service, economic development, and safety awareness, whereas Light and Power Department is a dependable and trustworthy institution whose local operation provides many consumer protections, continues to make our community a better place to live and work, and contributes to a sustainable environment. Now therefore be it resolved that Light and Power Department will continue to work to bring safe, reliable energy to community homes and businesses, just as it has since 1891, the year when the utility was created to serve all the citizens of St. Clairsville, and be it further resolved that the week of October 1st through the 7th be designated Public Power Week to recognize St. Clairsville Light and Power Department for all its contributions to the community and to educate customer owners, policymakers, and employees on the benefits of public power. And be it further resolved, our community joins hands with more than 2,000 other public power systems in the U.S. in the celebration of public power, which is best for consumers, business, the community, and the nation. And for that, we thank our workers. Thank you, Donnie. I know we've got several of our gentlemen that work for the city in the back. I can't thank you enough. These were the guys that were there, especially during that horrific ice storm. Has that been last year? It seems like last week or 2 years ago. And they were out working to get power, water, and utilities out when nobody else was moving around. So please know how much I appreciate you all. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Correspondence. I realize Jeremy's not here, but maybe somebody else can speak for him. The email we got from Quicksaw about the Dorothy tank. I have questions on that. I don't know if anybody.
I don't know if anybody actually here can actually answer anything on that right now.
Okay.
Will he be at the next meeting? Is he gone long? How long is he gone? I know he's in Germany, so.
He should be back at the next meeting. Any other questions for the mayor? Okay, we'll move on to Police Chief Matt Arbenz.
Good evening, Council. Short and sweet stats for September. We had 401 calls and complaints that were handled, 10 crashes, 18 arrests, 3 warrants served, 4 domestics, and 105 traffic stops. All personnel are healthy and reporting for work. That's it.
Thank you, Matt. Good to see all of you guys back. That nobody got injured worse than they did in the accident. Anyone have any questions for the police chief? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to planning and zoning administrator, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Jim. For council, a couple of items or just updates. The Board of Zoning Appeals, they did meet last week and approved all variances for the Cumberland Trail Fire District. Many of you are aware it's a real important project for the city. They're going to be proposing some additions, and and updated parking lot. The facilities right now are constructed for a volunteer department and have been full-time for quite a while. So that's our first step, and Christie will update you a little bit on the second step. That door meeting again is on October 17th at 6 p.m. Council chambers here. The door committee members, we're encouraging all members of council to attend just to help educate yourselves, because ultimately you will be the ones that will come up with the guidelines and adopt it if council as a whole so wishes to. The last item, Jim asked me kind of an update on situation or something that was going around Facebook, and he asked me to just briefly go over it and what the requirements of code would be for any proposal like this in the next step. So I just was going to again update council that Darren Davis applied to have a temporary use for May to September. That name of the temporary use was Frosty's Frozen Frenzy. I think everyone's familiar with that business and location. This temporary use was approved for these proposed dates kind of as a trial basis. It's kind of new in the community. The week of September 18th, excuse me, I'm battling allergies a little bit. Darren came in a few times, and he wanted to know if he could extend this use and had some various questions. We had good conversations and discussions, and I told him that I could not extend this approval. It's not really temporary anymore, but we did briefly discuss some of the different options that he would have to maybe go through. Our code looks at a temporary use. It's not listed as a principal permitted use. So it must, in accordance to our code, it must be looked at individually and follow the conditional use section of the code, which outlines that it is recognized that an increasing number of new kinds of uses are appearing daily, and that many of these uses and some of their more conventional uses possess characteristics of such unique and special nature relative to the location, the design, size, method of operation, circulation, public facilities, and each specific use must be considered individually. According to code, the city has to look at what the standards are for conditional use, which include the character of the proposed uses, structures shall be in harmony with the surrounding neighborhood and shall meet all bulk requirements, code, regulations, and that the use will be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained so as to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity, and that such use will not change the essential character of the area. And I mean, city-wise, we have to look at the entire community and not just one area. You know, how will a certain use approved a certain way? How will that affect other neighborhoods and land uses and things like that? So just to kind of summarize a little bit, some of the different options, and this is also for Darren as well, just to understand them. One option is to apply for a conditional use or a substantially similar use, kind of the same thing, before the Board of Zoning Appeals by submitting the required information outlined by the code. The second step would be, due to the denial of the proposed use, one can appeal the Planning and Zoning Administrator's decision to the Board of Zoning Appeals by submitting the required information outlined by code for an appeal. The third option would be that City Council as a whole, they agreed they wanted to look at this, can vote to direct the administration to look at updating the city code to develop guidelines for a temporary use such as Frosty's or similar use, temporary use, so that there are clear guidelines for the future. And if someone wants to establish a year-round business, they really should look at an actual storefront that would be available in town. That's kind of in a nutshell what the whole discussion and land use was about. But I'd open it up to council on any questions, and feel free to ask them.
Ryan, do you have a question?
Yeah. I mean, I do feel that we do have to, look out at the businesses that are already established on that. But also, I feel that we need to look at the guidelines on that and strengthen the guidelines where, we can allow new businesses like this to come in, and but to be, possibly different rules or whatever, or more strict rules, strengthen it. But I mean, that's my thoughts on it. I appreciate that they was in St. Clairsville, and I'd like to see them back. But I think council needs to, like I said, strengthen the guidelines.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I get a couple. So the city issued a temporary permit in May, from May to September.
Right, Darren had applied for May through September to establish Frosty's as on a temporary basis, and the conclusion being at the end of September.
Okay. So we gave that without, I mean, that's like a individual decision also?
It was kind of on a trial basis. I mean, people do talk about trying to encourage business and wanting to be business friendly, so that was an attempt to do that and give a defined time period which they applied for, and that time period expired.
So that's what, 4 months?
May, June, July, August.
Yes.
5 months, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. And that was the agreed upon time frame then?
Yes.
Was there a discussion, and Darren, right, you guys did it, so I'd like to hear from them.
Sure.
But yeah, just let me ask a couple more questions, and like if that's okay with you guys. So for 5 months, and it was temporary at that point because, and I guess where I'm trying to understand is, you could they could apply for an extension. Is that accurate?
Someone can ask that, but I don't feel comfortable granting an extension because it's not temporary anymore. It's becoming a permanent or perpetual use if someone applies for it again. So that's why I have to look at those different sections of the code. And because how things transpired, I mean, I don't feel comfortable making a decision like that again. I think it would be best to, as Don had mentioned, coming up with some type of guidelines so that I'm protected, the city's protected, you're protected, Mr. Davis is protected, so that whatever is applied for is, it's a temporary use, that's what it should be, temporary. And if someone's looking at a use that's more than a few months or 3 months, 4 months, whatever it is, I mean, it's becoming a permanent land use, and it really kicks into a whole set of different guidelines, which we have to look at everybody within the city, and if there are other businesses or property owners and they have empty storefronts and a business is established such as this and it becomes permanent, that's not really, it's not helping out the community as a whole. It becomes permanent. Temporary, I mean, Darren was good to work with. They obviously had a successful business and ebb and flow like any other business. So I said to him, I said, I'd love to see him establish a storefront in town or move into a storefront, and whether finances don't allow because profit margins and all that fun stuff. But then, is that fair to the other established businesses and people that have storefronts in the community? Where does it end, maybe? And that's why I think it's good, in the long term, for council to look at temporary uses and determine how, as a group, you might want to regulate them and, again, make sure everyone's protected.
How did the 5 months come about?
That's what Darren had applied for. He had put that in there.
Is there a limit to the time?
There's no, in our code, there's no, that's what's kind of difficult about it, is that there's no specific guideline on temporary.
So how do you apply for a year temporary? Where do we cut off that, well, that's not really temporary anymore?
No, that's a good point, right. I mean, that's a good question, and that's why council should look at developing something that is easy, I'll say, so that if someone applies for it, they know exactly how long they can be there, and if they want to be there for a longer period of time, and they'll know clearly, well, we'll have to get a storefront and move into a storefront.
So there's nothing that says what that temporary time frame is?
Right, there's nothing,
at the
exactly.
moment.
Yeah.
And then the decision to grant them even the temporary permit, how is that decision made?
That was made by me to, again, be business friendly and try to see how this would go. And that's frequently a question people ask, what St. Clairsville doing to kind of encourage different businesses. And I figured, well, this is a good first step. We'll see how this proceeds.
So it's solely your discretion in the beginning?
Right. Yeah, I looked at it from, how are we, is this a positive thing? Let's give it a shot and let's give it a trial.
So, do you guys want to speak?
I have a Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Terry.
I was writing, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that when we set that up, that was just, like when we started, he said, about how long do you want to go through? And I told him, around September. It was more of a hit than I thought it was gonna be. I mean, we had over 5,500 sales, so I mean, we had a lot of, and more than 4,000 of those was St. Clairsville residents themselves. So we did have a lot of people locally that enjoyed it and that liked, and I don't know if one of the things that happened was we thought we could just roll right in, and we thought, hey, coffee, drive up coffee, there's nothing in St. Clairsville. We went ahead and moved the building, tried to make it a drive-through, and then, that's when he said, whoa, wait a minute, you can't have a drive-through, you can't just throw a drive-through up, you're gonna have to do something a little bit different. And then, the more we talked, the more he just pretty much said, this isn't gonna work, we can't do this. And the outpour of people that have came, they're wondering why we aren't there and what we can do to help, and we're willing to do that too. That's obviously the prime location and a good spot to take care of the St. Clairsville people. We hate to have to go somewhere else, but that's kind of where we stand on that.
I have a couple questions. So, barring that we don't have any time frame on the temporary, right? So the original that he came to you with, he could have applied for a year.
No, I mean, that wouldn't have been accepted. I couldn't have approved, and that's not a
Well, I
temporary.
thought that's what you just told her. She just said there's no time frame on the temporary.
No.
You decided for 5 months,
You're
right?
right.
But
You're
you're
right.
saying there's not really a time limit on how long they could have.
I mean, the temporary use to me is just a short period of time. And then I have to make a judgment on that. I mean, and that's part of my job. And people, might not agree with that, and that's okay. I mean, there's a
Well, I
process.
understand that, but she just asked you, I believe, in her question, could it have been longer than 5 months, and you said yes.
Yeah, I guess
do believe it.
that was my question. I was like, so what is the time frame? And you're like, it's not defined.
Right, there's
It could have been
nothing.
anything. And I said, so if they would have said a year, you would have said, there's nothing. So what would we approve up to?
I
We're just
couldn't-
trying to understand.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned to you, that's not, a year is not a temporary use anymore. It's like a full-time use. It's a perpetual almost. And I mean, I wouldn't have, no matter who it was, if someone had come in and said, hey, I want a temporary use, but it's for a year, I mean, that's not temporary. Temporary, especially, what the proposal was, the ice cream shop was for the summer. And that's where they applied for, and I felt comfortable with that. But, I mean, something longer than that, you're becoming not a temporary use anymore.
That's fine, I guess I just misunderstood your answer to her question,
That's
because when
fine.
she asked you about a defined time period, and what my question was is, what's the difference if they could apply for 10 months, as opposed to, they did it for 5 months, they tried it, it was good, it was great, people loved it, they wanted to come back for another 5 months, and you made it very clear that you would not feel comfortable doing that.
Right.
But what would have been the difference if he would have applied for 10 months to start out? I mean, that's still temporary. If you're, I mean, I guess I'm asking, who determines what's temporary?
Right,
And how long
I
is
would-
temporary if there's no definition of temporary?
I mean, it would be up to me to kind of interpret what I feel that would be. And that's why I'm saying, since we don't have anything definitive, I mean, to protect me, to protect council, to protect the business owners, I feel that's an appropriate path to take, is the council say, okay, let's come up with something that's acceptable. So if someone applies for something similar, no matter who it is, we can have everybody protected. Because if I'm making a decision based on what I feel temporary is, and there's not a specific timeline on what that is, again, it would just protect me as well as everybody else.
My other thing, and with that, is I feel like we need to outline what temporary is, so that there's no confusion in the future.
Yeah.
How would people know what's deemed temporary and what is not? And two, I know you're bringing up, and when we have a discussion, and and Catherine, you were on board with this too, saying how's that look to other businesses who are paying for, I think you said brick and mortar, right? Paying for a storefront. But what I'm saying, as a business owner who has a good business, a good location, a fair rent, I'm saying that many other places in town do not have that, and it doesn't seem to be changing. And so how are the little guys supposed to, you know, for someone who has ice cream or who has shaved ice or who has, you know, a bakery who is being charged outlandish rent, how are people supposed to continue profitable businesses if the options aren't there? Because rent, and you don't have control over that, nobody has control over that except for the landlord, so I understand that, I get that. But I'm saying, if they're not willing to budge on that, what other options do we have to bring businesses into town if we as a city are not willing to take a second look at what we call temporary or permanent, or, you know, what is harmonious with the city, because that apparently is up to just a few people's visions, right, opinions of what's harmonious and what's not. So I'm saying, how are we even supposed to try to bring more businesses in if rent is just outlandish, which it is, and you know it is, we discussed that, and they're not going to budge on that, then we do have to find other ways to allow other businesses to have opportunities in some way or another to bring their business into town in some fashion or another. And a small collection of people saying it's harmonious or it fits or it doesn't is driving businesses and opportunities out. That's my opinion. And as I told you, and as we discussed, from traffic light to traffic light, just in town, we have 20 empty storefronts. And I understand that that's not all because of the city and the codes and, you know, things like that, and our strict guidelines, what we go by. But I'm saying, with 20 empty storefronts, part of it is because of rent. I feel as a city, we better start finding another way to let these businesses come in, and have a shot of being the least bit productive, or we're not going to have anything.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on the timeline. I mean, there has to be something developed on that. And, you know, look at updating the code on, you know, what that is and what type of land uses they are. We have something set up now before the Board of Zoning Appeals where someone can, you know, like I mentioned here, it's conditional use. There's unique uses, there's new uses all the time. So there's an avenue set up that from now on, you know, that part of what I would be comfortable with allowing someone to do, and they can go before that board. In the meantime, obviously, we should come up with better guidelines as far as what temporary use is. I did go through downtown, and there wasn't 20 vacancies. I counted 16, which is a good number. But I think there was 3 of those that are already in transition, new businesses. One's a potential restaurant, one's a law office where it has vacant, and quickly another attorney bought it. And the other use someone for business, and they're turning it into residential. And like you and I discussed, I think it's a valid and a great question of with the high rents that some of the building owners are charging. It's not good. Now, this discussion, unfortunately, in a public format, you know, portrays to the public that, you know, we're not open for business, and so that's an unfortunate thing. So we have to think of ways to say no. You know, we have opportunities here. We've talked about parking. There's plenty of parking in town. It's just kind of gearing people to understand where that is and not being concerned about, you know, walking down the street. So, I mean, the council convening a commission to meet with those property owners that maybe they don't know who they are and their rents are kind of forcing people out. Say, hey, you know, what can you do to keep those businesses? Because that not only hurts the downtown, the rents are too high, but, you know, hurts that business and hurts the community as a whole. Now, what's kind of unique right now is earlier this year we had 90% occupancy in downtown, whatever the figure was. It was high. That was great. Well, since then, unfortunately, a number of businesses closed for various reasons. But I think it is a valid question about trying to figure out what he's going to do those property owners and say, look, what can be done to bring your rents down, or at least bring them to a point where someone's willing to move in there.
You mentioned coffee. You were going to have coffee. That sounds different to me than what you had in the summer.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
Would an acceptable solution be perhaps to grant them another temporary permit while council reviews the guidelines?
I
Could we
think
do that, since it seems like it's a new use, although it's the same people and it's the same building?
So,
Is there something that could be done to allow these folks to open for the winter months?
Right, I mean, and I mentioned, you know, it'd be to set the conditional use substantially similar process, that they could do that before the Board of Zoning Appeals. They can appeal my decision, now that's, you know, I wouldn't recommend that, but, and then it would be the meantime, council could start a process, you know, to update that section of the planning and zoning code, or start to research out.
okay, all right.
Doing that now, it should be.
I'm missing what you're saying.
Yeah, I know.
Is there a phone? Somebody's having a conversation?
Yeah, I think he's done.
What's that? Okay, we good? I can't hear Tom.
Yeah, so,
I missed the part about they can't appeal your decision, they can't.
well, they can, but I necessarily, you know, that would be an extensive process, and I don't know, I mean, I could go over all three options with them, you know, as far as the conditional use process, they can do that, the appeal process, and then, you know, council, the third thing would be coming up with guidelines that protect everybody involved and kind of allow what Eric had suggested, you know, on a temporary basis, come up with a timeline on what's acceptable. Someone coming in and extending a temporary use, then it's a temporary. So it's important that, you know, the guidelines or length would be established by council if that's the route you want to go.
JC, go ahead.
This business is not I mean, technically it's temporary, but it's a seasonal business. If the coffee and the donuts doesn't work, they're going to be open from May till September. Now, how do we handle that if they're just seasonal? Do we have a section of our code that goes just for seasonal?
I mean, that would
Or would that be temporary as well?
Well, seasonal, I think it's kind of the same thing, but if council was going to come up with some guidelines, you'd want to define maybe the definition for temporary use and seasonal use are kind of the same thing. I mean, what other communities would do would be, okay, in the course of 12 months, temporary guideline would be, you know, whether it's 3 months, 4 or 5, whatever. And then someone would be able to renew that in that 12-month time period, because then it's become, you know, if you have an existing structure and they're selling, you know, for example, ice cream and then jump into another uses, it's still the same business or is it a different business? Long story short, we should have better guidelines.
Is there any way that council can vote on giving them temporary permits for their coffee and donuts?
Not the way the code is set up. I mean, that would be maybe illegal.
Yeah, that would, we have to follow the way the code is set up, the procedures.
So we have
set
to
forth.
change the code.
The way
Which
we
code
have
is
it,
it?
yes.
Which code? What is the code?
The,
City planning and zoning
Planning and
section
zoning,
of the
yeah.
city code.
if you look
Which
in your
section?
ordinance book, it's under,
I can't remember the numbers right now.
I don't have it in front of me.
1100, I think. But
Yeah.
1101.06.
Yeah, chapter
Chapter
section
11.
yeah.
But then there would be something specific in this part of the code.
Right. I mean, you know, like I said, Darren was very good to work with, I thought, and had a good business. And it's great to, you know, have this incubator type of business, and then you'd love to see it move into a permanent storefront, and it develops into something long-term.
It kind of sounds to me like we got some areas in this code that aren't necessarily clear that probably council should look at. As Tom and a couple of the council people all said, we need to clarify some of this information. But I was also, I talked to Tom and I talked to Elizabeth a little bit. My understanding, I don't pretend to understand the code itself on mine. But I was also under the impression that the way that the resident, the zoning rules are at this point, that a drive-through in that area goes against the code also.
Right, the way our code is set up, if someone's gonna have a drive-through, they would have to have a condition of, they would have to go and get that special approval from the Board of Zoning Appeals.
And I think that comes into where, especially in the summer, I know they've had problems with the Dairy Queen in the summer too, where traffic actually backs up into the street. And I was under the impression, unless I misunderstood what I was told, that if the Dairy Queen would attempt to put a drive-through in now, they would not be able to put it in under the code. It was grandfathered in because it was there when the code was put in afterwards. So I think council really needs to look at the code and make a determination as to, and actually come up with a number, what defines seasonal business, a temporary business, and what the maximum time limit is for a temporary permit. And like Tom said, that if they want to go further, they would have to appeal that, I guess, to the zoning board, to the zoning board of appeals.
I agree that these need to be reviewed, and we can do that certainly. I don't know what we need to do to make that happen, but those things are not always very quickly done. I would really like to see what we can do to expedite letting these people go through the process. Not expedite, but, you know.
Is there anything that can actually be done as long as
Well,
there's...
we have a
there's
procedure
remorse?
set up for appeal, which is going through the Board of Zoning Appeal.
Right, I mean, that conditional use would probably be the quickest process they could go through, and that once someone submits everything, it's like a month process roughly. We have to set up here, we have to make sure there's a quorum of that board. I mean, updating the planning and zoning code, the way the ORC sets that up as far as timelines, and our code reflects that. I mean, that's, once a final set of guidelines maybe would be agreed upon by council, then you set up, I mean, it's like a 4 to 6 month long process. It's not, because you're basically changing the law. It's not a quick thing. You know, hence when we updated the zoning map, you know, COVID threw everything off, so it's not a great example, but it took years because of COVID. But, you know, and that was a good thing. We were looking into properties adjacent to the downtown district that were like maybe structures that were maybe homes at one time or commercial, and for whatever reason, they had been zoned in a primarily a residential type of district, a CD corridor district. And when I spearheaded those changes, I mean, it was maybe, I'd have to double check, but it could have been as many as 20 properties that were put in a more relevant zoning district, so that someone wasn't going through an extra step. You had your existing business that was office there for years. Why should someone have to go through, you know, a separate step to reestablish an office? So, you know, we streamline those things. It's something, and frequently you don't know issues with your code until a situation comes up, and like this, and then it kind of exposes your code for deficiencies that, you know, you just have to update. As mentioned, you know, there's always uses that are changing. We have something in our code that kind of has that path that could be followed now, and council can look the more long-term of updating that temporary use type of section.
Okay, I want to say one thing that you had before, and we probably need to get moving along here because we have probably talked about this all night. But my understanding is that even though council was considering changing these regulations, at this particular time, all that could be done is go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. That would be the quickest way, the way I understand it. And I don't know if Mr. Davis, would you be interested in filing an appeal to the Board of and
We could do that.
take that step back, because unless I'm wrong,
Doing the conditional use, having it.
Right,
That's the-
conditional use.
that is
You
the
told me it
shortest
could take up
thing.
to 3 to 4 months to go through all those processes, and we're not willing to wait that long.
Well, the Board of Zoning Appeals, that conditional use process isn't that. I mean, if you wanted to become, if you were looking more at a permanent, I'll say temporary use, then that's when a whole set of other guidelines kick in, like site plan review and stormwater and all, and that's what takes months, because you'd have to hire an engineer and all that. You naturally wouldn't want to go that route.
That's for
You just want
permanent
to go
structures.
before that board. That board ultimately decides, they might ask my advice, is that type of use consistent with that district? And I would have to give my opinion on, and they would make their own. Obviously, they don't have to agree with me. Is okay as a business in a shed, is that something they want to see in that district?
It's not a shed.
Well,
It's not a
yeah,
shed.
it's,
Could you issue a temporary permit for us to do business and then go through the zoning? Because it could take several months. And then if it didn't work out, pull back out of there?
like I mentioned, I don't feel comfortable doing that. You'd
Okay.
have to follow this conditional use process.
And council can't make a motion or an ordinance for something temporary until because to me,
Because there's a
two
process
issues
that you've
here.
already, past councils, not this particular council, has already set up this process that's in our codified ordinances. So that's what we're bound to follow until council then changes that.
So- but
Now, the
understanding-
conditional use is about a month process.
Approximately, yeah. Once
Approximately a
someone
month.
submits
That's
all the
probably your
information
quickest
needed.
route.
Um,
And you're
Yeah.
operating under a mobile food license currently, correct? So that's, another thing that you have to look at. I don't know how often you have to renew that. I know you have to be able to move the unit, and you're supposed to move it so many days. So those are all things that, you can look at when you're doing your conditional use.
Yeah, and then the question does come up, just for fairness to Darren, is if you have a coffee shop and a donut shop and say it's approved by that board for so many months, then in the summer you want to change that to an ice cream shop and be temporary. That would probably mean going before them. Again, I'd have to talk to Elizabeth about that, but you're kind of changing, that temporary use. And that may be totally worth it to you. I just don't know enough about all the particulars of your business.
Sounds like a lot of work. Changing codes and moving stuff around.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest thing is, if you have, again, and I know it might not be feasible at this point in time, is, just moving into an existing storefront. And then it's commercially zoned. That process is actually very easy. Someone applies and the zoning's a proper permit, and that's good perpetuity. And then, there's only other things, a sign permit, and then you can stay there.
Then you miss out on the drive-through, because most
Right, I
businesses,
mean,
and that's what we
exactly.
were trying to go
Yeah.
for, was the drive-through. There's already a sit-down coffee place, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Elizabeth, you're saying there's nothing council can do?
You can look at revising your ordinances.
Which is month-long process.
Right,
Months-long
right.
process.
As a short-term, no. The fastest is doing the conditional use.
And we can't make a motion or a resolution to extend that temporary use that Tom granted in May.
No, because we already have a procedure set up under the
Can they
code.
appeal that length of time?
You can appeal a decision that I've made. I can go over that process with you if you wanted to.
But how long does that take?
I'd have to double check. I want to say there's certain time limits of once someone submits everything that's required of code. I don't know whether it's like 30 days that a hearing is set up before the Board of Zoning Appeals. And don't quote me on that. Those are all my quick look at what that process was.
But this was denied because the permit ran out, or is there an additional reason it was denied because then they wanted to do something different?
Well, the permit ran out in the timeline, and I didn't feel comfortable once it's like, hey, we want to be there again. It's, in my opinion, okay, temporary was only for these 5 months. Now it's not temporary anymore. I don't feel comfortable. Someone else is going to have to, make that decision, and it's out in the public so that everyone knows what's going on. And that public hearing, everything could be established as far as a timeline. and that's maybe the best way to do it now in the short term. Or in the longer term, I mean, it's good to come up with guidelines to protect everyone.
This is where I think council needs to sit down and look at this and make a decision themselves, whether they want to change this, to make a decision on what is the time frame for temporary, and that, because that needs to be clear cut in the ordinances itself or in the zoning regulations. And that is something that makes it very simple for Tom or whoever is issuing the permit to know this is the guideline they have to follow. I guess, like I say, I'm not the attorney, according to Elizabeth. There's nothing we can do right now other than advise him to maybe go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and see if they can get it through for you to change it. And I guess am I correct in that's the only thing that can be done
Right,
until
following
council
the
sits down and
procedures.
makes these changes, if they want to do it. So that's, I knew it was a nice little place, my kids live there too, but it's, you know, it's just, we're unfortunate. We can't make rules and regulations and follow them when we want. If we don't like them, we need to change them. But until we change them, we're stuck with them.
Well, I think that's where our questions are from, is what's the process to change them? And so that's gonna take time to do that. And I'm just looking, is there anything that we can do on a temporary basis and keep
Right,
hearing there's nothing that we can do?
we've got to follow the
How
procedures.
quickly can a zoning board, appeals board meet?
They meet at the need of an applicant, so usually what I tell an applicant is the quicker you can get me everything that's required. You know, I contact, once I have everything that's part of that application, I contact the board, make sure the quorum will be present.
Who's on the zoning board?
Let's see, it's Randy Bernard, Ed Reese, Mark Lloyd, and Jared Sloan.
Is that where we have a vacancy, or is that full?
Yes, there's a vacancy on there.
So say it again, Randy Bernard,
Randy Bernard, Ed Reese, Mark Lloyd, and Jared Sloan.
And when are we gonna fill that? Is that you that fills that, or?
I don't fill it. I mean, I try to, what's unique about this last position was Charlie, he was on the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals. He was the Planning Commission representative, the way our codes are drawn up. He was the Planning Commission representative on the Board of Zoning Appeals. One of the requirements, the Planning Commission doesn't have a residency requirement. The Board of Zoning Appeals does. So you have to make sure that that Planning Commission member is a resident and they can serve on that board, and they have to be willing to do that. So we're looking for someone, again, who's out for the interest of St. Clairsville and is willing to serve on both of those boards.
is it a mayor's appointment?
Yes.
So the mayor appoints someone to the planning commission, and that person is then, if they're.
Right, we would have to we'd have to make sure that they were willing to serve on both boards. They have to be appointed by the Planning Commission to serve on the BZA. We had that BZA meeting last week, and I did ask them, you know, are any of the members of the BZA willing to join the Planning Commission, or do you have interest in that because they're already on the Board of Zoning Appeals? And they were going to think about it. I haven't heard yet, so maybe that's the answer.
So is the mayor's appointed with council approval?
Yeah.
So do you, I think this is an appointment that needs to be recommended sooner rather than later?
It's going to be, yeah, if Tom finds some
I mean, it's not as
candidates.
it's not as easy
No,
as
it's
it
not
sounds,
easy.
because you want someone who understands both construction and the planning commission and development, and subdivision development and engineering. So you have an engineer as a real estate person, attorney, and there's not a lot of people in that pool.
Sounds like we need a business person on there.
Yeah, we do have business people on there now, like the attorney.
So I want to make sure that they understand. Is going to the appeals court, is that something you'd be interested in?
We'll talk about it. If it didn't take a long time, the problem I have is that when I talked with Tom, he said that it could take a while. He said that he would not be in favor of it, so he would not be voting for it, and made it sound like the other people would not either.
I don't vote for anything. If they ask me my opinion, I have to tell them what that is, and I say, if they ask me, do I feel that, a shed, or I'm sorry, a structure, small structure in a parking lot is appropriate, I have to look at the whole city. I don't have the luxury of just, looking at pay that a lot of people go to, it was successful. I can't look at it only in that way. I have to look at it from that big picture, and will someone else request the same thing? Would that be in an office district? Hey, I want to have an office, and I'm going to put a small structure there in a parking lot. I mean, that's up to that, ultimately, that Board of Zoning Appeals to decide. If they ask me my opinion, I'll give it. And they don't have to agree with me. They can go in another direction. That's fine. There's no hard feelings from
What if it's a tie?
That's a good question when you only have 2 members. If it's a tie, I want to say there is something drawn. I'll double check on that. But I think they extend that hearing to another date, and someone would have to change their decision. If they didn't, then that's when, unfortunately, maybe Elizabeth gets called in, and she'll have to research maybe some other communities on when that situation arises.
So I'm hearing you say that this meeting could happen. You're gonna, if they want to talk about it and choose to move forward, then you would call the members and you would say, we've got an issue that needs brought to your attention, and that could happen within weeks.
Well, it doesn't happen exactly like that. So I sit down with a petitioner or someone that wants to follow that process. I go over what's needed to be submitted for an application, fees, and whatever that might be.
What are the fees?
For conditional use, it's only $100.
And this is what the appeals would be for conditional use?
Well, I wouldn't call it an appeal for a conditional use. It's just, there's 2 separate things. They're requesting a conditional use slash substantially similar use to what's permitted. And again, this is a lot for one night, but we'll sit down and talk about that in more layman's terms. So once someone does submit an application, because we might sit down with them and they might say, look, for whatever reasons we do want to go forward, or for whatever reasons we don't, but if they say, yeah, we'll gather everything together, we'll submit it. Once I get that complete application is when I contact the board to set up a hearing.
How much was the initial permit?
$35, and then they have a sign permit too, so submitted for that. They submitted that application as well.
Okay, again, like I said, we could probably sit here and talk about this till midnight, but I think at this point, the best thing you can do right now is get with Tom and see if you are interested in appealing it, and go from there, and I guess that's what we have to go by until the changes are made.
Can we write a letter of recommendation from the council to the board members?
No, that's a good question, JC. I mean, whenever there's a Board of Zoning Appeals meeting coming up, or Planning Commission, I mention that to City Council and say, look, everybody's invited. You don't just have to live adjacent to it. You can, everybody's invited to come and state their opinion positively or negatively at that. So they're always, you don't need to, I mean, you can do a letter if you want, but the better thing is probably coming to the meeting.
That would be a good recommendation, if they have that meeting pertaining to this. If council members want to attend and give a recommendation, they should go to the meeting and give that recommendation to the board. Okay, Mr. Davis, are you clear on what you need to do with Tom? And I hope it all works out, because they say it was a nice place, but again, the way I understand it, until they do change the regulations, we have to go by them. So, and I think some of them probably do, like our charter, some of it does need clarification.
So before we end this, I think I would like the council to look at this. So whatever, is that part of the planning commission? I mean, what's the process? I mean, we got a short-term thing here that how can we can we do anything? What can we do for this? But then, long range, like Tom, you said you invite us to every planning commission meeting, but you're right. If we don't know this, you know what I mean? Like,
Right,
I didn't know that
frequently, I
this
mean-
was an issue, right? And now it is, so now there's interest, and now we want to do something. So we definitely, I think I'm hearing people say that they want this looked at. So what do we need to do for that?
Well, I mean, the first process would be, there's different ways codes can be updated. One is the planning commission can kind of request that, so at our next planning commission is when we kind of discuss this and follow the proper process. The first thing is research and finding out, okay, what the other communities do. Not that we have to use what another community has, but it's always good to see what might be out there. And then, we come up with guidelines that you feel comfortable with for our community.
The next planning commission meeting?
Let's see. Yeah, it's, I think, the second Monday, which would be, that'd be, and nothing's been set up yet at all because we haven't had a need to have one. But it would end up being the 10th. But I think in a case like this, it might be best to, that's only a week away, to set up some type of a special meeting just specifically for this to discuss, okay, how are we going to
I think.
push this forward.
Yeah.
So I could maybe sit down with Christie and then contact the other planning commission members to determine, okay, what's a good date to meet. Planning commission doesn't have to meet that second Monday. They can, yeah, kind of set up a special meeting, and you could work with Jacob on that to get that notice in the newspaper. And again, this is just kind of to get the ball rolling. What do we want to do? How do we want to start the research?
Yeah, well, I want to do two things. I want this looked at, but I want to see how we can continue to, if there's anything we can do. Appreciate you guys
Thank you.
being here and business.
It was a great time.
So,
People loved it.
yeah.
I've got attached to many of them. I wonder how they're doing now.
Well, I think you can think about the appeals and, again, however, we want, I think we all want to work together here. How can we follow our rules, change the rules that need to be changed, but what else can we do? So, Tom, appreciate your explaining things to us, and so that we can kind of find a path and move forward, and I'm hoping that, if there's something that we could do immediately, I know we can't immediately, I'm gonna ask that 13 times, but, whatever we could, we'll stay in touch, so.
Thank you
Patient.
very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, Tom, do you have anything else? Thank you for coming.
No, that's it.
Any other questions on any other topics? Tom?
You'll let us know about the planning commission meeting.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, we'll move on now to the council committees, finance.
I didn't get to speak to them yet this week, so no report.
Excuse me.
Okay, utilities, Tara?
We had a meeting tonight and we went over the billing report as usual and then approved a payment plan request for the landlord, and our next meeting will be November 6th.
Okay, any questions for Tara on utilities? Mike's not here tonight for police. Street north side, Mike's not here, so south side, JC, do you have anything on south side streets?
No report.
Do you have anything on safety?
No report.
Building and grounds, Beth?
So we had a meeting on the 16th. It was a second combined meeting with junior sports. The contract from 1988 specifies that there'll be at least an annual meeting with the city and junior sports, and I don't think that previous Previously, that hadn't occurred, so this administration is really supportive about working with junior sports. So we've been discussing how we can continue to partner with them, because, you know, I think that we have partnered with them, but I think that we're even more willing to do that. There's a set, we want to do more of that. So talking about how maybe we can help with utilities, how we can help with various projects throughout the year. And one of the things that we also want to do is update that the contract from 1988. So we'll be working with their leadership, their current leadership of junior sports, in order to get the contract, again, similar to what we've talked about, a little more detailed, so people know who's responsible for what. So we'll continue to meet with junior sports. And we do not yet have another meeting with the Building and Grounds Committee. Another meeting scheduled. We do not.
Okay, thanks. Anybody have any questions for that? We'll move on to Planning Commission.
As Tom mentioned, the Cumberland Trail variances have been approved. The Planning Commission will go over the final site plan for approval and then make its recommendation to council.
Anybody have any questions for Christie? Thank you. Fire District,
No report yet because our meeting is not until the 18th, but Tom, thank you for the meeting with the variances.
Oh, you're welcome.
As I said, October 18th, 8:15 a.m. at the firehouse.
8:15.
Yes, 8:15 a.m.
Main firehouse.
a.m.
Anything on the park?
Recreation.
I'm sorry, I jumped one.
The Recreation Department Halloween event is sponsored by Unified Bank, and it will take place Saturday, October 21st from 6:30 to 9:30 at Central Park. Pre-registration is required to attend. You can sign up for this event by visiting the Rec Department website. Boo at the Bike Trail will be held October 24th from 4 to 6 p.m. No pre-registration is required. The Rec Department will be handing out candy in the Bike Trail tunnel. The next Rec Department board meeting will be held October 19th at 4:30 p.m. in the Rec Center. Everyone is welcome to attend.
Anybody have any comments or questions for Christie on recreation?
Just, I wanted to say, if anyone wants to volunteer to hand out candy for the boot, the bike trail, I think he would probably appreciate a little bit of help. You have to come in costume. So.
Okay, now we'll move on.
Nothing involving the city currently, but Catherine, you had asked me about the dogs swimming, and Katie said that you had called her the previous week, and she explained all of that to you. So maybe if you've forgotten, you can call her again. Okay.
I also had a call today from someone who had seen drug paraphernalia at the park. And I already talked to the police about it. They're going to do extra patrols. Perhaps you could talk to Katie. They were down by the kids' swings.
You've already talked to her?
I talked to the police. I've not talked to Katie yet. This came late in the day.
Okay, and the next meeting is October 10th, Tuesday, 4:30 p.m. at Preferred Legacy Trust.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Linda on park?
So what is the thing with dogs? Can they swim or not?
No, our pool does not drain the water.
Okay.
You know, some of the other
Yeah.
places do drain, but there's a whole long explanation as to the other things as well, the other issues. So you would need to call Kate.
Oh, no, I just wanted to know if you
Yeah.
talked to her
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
dogs can swim or not swim. That's fine.
No, they cannot.
Okay, we'll now move on to ordinances and resolutions. Law Director Elizabeth Flick.
Council has 4 pieces of legislation before you tonight. 3 are under the heading of first reading, so we'll take those 3 first and then do the third reading last. First up is resolution number 2023-32. That's a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the County Auditor and declaring an emergency. And I have an email from the Finance Director. This is an annual resolution. You do this every year. These are the amounts that have been come from the County Budget Commission. Finance Director received these on September 20th, and they're due in the Auditor's office October 1st. So that's the reason that's emergency legislation, or legislation. So
They're due October 1st?
October 1st is what was in her.
This is October 2nd.
Oh, it is October 2nd. Hopefully she had it as, I'm just going by her email. This is that could be a misprint, but I know it is due back in the county auditor's office.
Okay, so we have resolution 2023-32. Jacob, would you read that for the first reading, please?
Resolution number 2023-32, resolution accepting the amounts and rates determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the County Auditor and declaring an emergency.
Okay, they have requested emergency passage. Does anyone wish to go any further?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
They were due October 1st, so we must be getting a little bit of a grace period because
When did the county get them to us?
September 20th. So it was after our last.
So this was the quickest that we could
This
have
is the
got.
first meeting since, yes.
So this is for tax, this is so we can get revenue, correct?
Right.
I move that the rules requiring ordinances and resolutions to be read on 3 separate readings to be suspended, declaring an emergency.
Okay, we have a second, JC. Okay, we'll take a roll call vote to see whether or not the council would like to consider this emergency.
Butler,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Lipscomb,
Yes.
Oakridge,
Yes.
Thrash,
Yes.
Vincenzo.
Yes.
All members are
Okay, we have 6 in favor, so it will be considered emergency legislation. Jacob, will you read it again, please?
Resolution number 2023-32, resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the County Auditor and declaring an emergency.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to pass 2023-32. Second? Christie? We'll now take a roll call vote to pass the legislation.
Butler,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Lipscomb,
Yes.
Oakridge,
Yes.
Thrash,
Yes.
Vincenzo.
Yes.
All members are
Okay, resolution 2023-32 is passed. Now move on to 2023-33.
This is an ordinance to make supplemental appropriations and revenues for the normal expenses and other expenditures of the city of St. Clairsville, state of Ohio for the period January 1, 2023 through December 31st, 2023, and declaring an emergency. This was grant money that we have received and is in our bank account, and she needs to appropriate it into the budget.
Grant money from what?
It is for a vac trailer, which sucks up dirt, and a valve exerciser, which opens and closes valves. I'm reading off the email, so.
Right, but we got this from the state.
State,
if I'm looking at it.
correct,
The state
yes.
gave us this money.
Right,
So now we just need to put it in our budget.
right.
Do you need
Yeah.
an emergency?
Yes.
Okay, Jake, would you read 2023-33?
Ordinance number 2023-33, an ordinance to make supplemental appropriations and revenues for the normal expenses and other expenditures of the city of St. Clairsville, state of Ohio, for the period January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023, and declaring an emergency.
Move that the rules requiring ordinances and resolutions to be read on three separate readings be suspended and declaring an emergency.
Do I have a second? And a third and a fourth. Take a roll call vote to consider this emergency.
Butler,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Lipscomb,
Yes.
Oakridge,
Yes.
Thrash,
Yes.
Vincenzo.
Yes.
All members are in favor.
Council voted to consider this an emergency, so we will now read 2023-33 again.
Ordinance number 2023-33, an ordinance to make supplemental appropriations and revenues for the normal expenses and other expenditures of the city of St. Clairsville, state of Ohio, for the period January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023, and declaring an emergency.
Need a motion to consider that? Tara? We'll now take a roll call vote to pass the legislation itself.
Butler,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Lipscomb,
Yes.
Oakridge,
Yes.
Thrash,
Yes.
Vincenzo.
Yes.
All members are in favor.
Okay, now we have 2023-34.
Okay, 2023-34 is a resolution amending resolution number 2016-26, which was a resolution to establish rules for the citizens of the public to be placed on the agenda to address the city council at open meetings. And if that's,
Yeah, I'm changing my mind.
okay.
Okay, so I want more input. The only person I've really heard from council, so I just feel like this still needs discussion, but I feel at this point, like, I think it just needs to be repealed. I think anybody who comes to council should get to say something. This is just, and Jim has, Jim and I talked about this beforehand, and he thinks it should, I'm not gonna be here after December 31st, so like, I don't have a whole say in this, but I feel like I'm still on council, and I do have a say, and I feel like council until December 31st. And I just feel like, I appreciate that we want some order. I absolutely believe there should be some decorum. People shouldn't be screaming at people. People shouldn't be calling people names. It should not be disrespectful, and I think that's the president and council's job, is to shut that down if that would start. But anybody who comes in, whether or not they were on agenda, I think if they want to say something, they get to say something. And if it's not in the purview of city council to do anything about it, then we need to say, it's not in our purview, we can't do anything about it. But I do want to hear from the citizens. So I guess I just feel at this point, the council president can stop somebody if they're being disrespectful. They can put a time limit on it. But I just feel like I support just repealing it.
Okay.
So do you want a motion to table this?
No, I want to hear
currently?
what other people think too,
Okay.
right? But then what does, so yeah, table this at this
So
point.
you need a motion, you need to make a motion to table and get a second.
Okay,
and do
because
a
I
vote.
want to table, so I'm making a motion
I'll
to
second.
table that so that we can have more discussion, right?
Right.
Yeah. But I would like to have some discussion.
At this point, right now? Beth?
Well, this has been with
Or do you
everybody
wanna
for a
take
couple
a-
weeks, but we can table it and discuss it next time, but I guess I would
Right.
say, what do people think? Should people be on agenda? Should there be a time limit? So, okay, let me just, I vote to table this for now.
So you have a motion
I do.
to table, JC seconded that. And
Do
then,
we have any discussion or comments before this is tabled?
I mean, you can, this is just a motion to table this particular legislation. If you
Right.
want to totally repeal, that's a whole different resolution.
Well, I could just withdraw
Right, yeah, you can
this.
withdraw it, yes.
If I just withdraw this,
Right,
But
which
then
would be
I-
the same thing as tabling. I mean, we're
Okay.
just not going to just,
and they may say, no, we would like it the way it is, that's
Mhm.
fine, but we haven't had the discussion yet, so I guess I'm looking for time to
But
have that discussion.
before you make a decision, I just want to say this, and you decide to table it, whatever. I am not necessarily for changing it or against it. My only thought process is, this was passed in 2016. Maybe there are some changes that need to be made in it. But since this particular piece of legislation does set part of the I guess you would call it the tone for the council meeting, or the procedures to follow to be on the agenda or to speak to council. And there is not a lot of things that, according to the charters, there's some things that council has no control over. So I'm not necessarily for it or against it, but my thought process would be, since this is going to be a discussion that changes the potential way council meetings are held, that rather than vote on it now, we're going to have very shortly new council members. We've got a couple that are definitely not going to be here. I appreciate the fact that Beth put forth, her opinion. That's great. She's been here almost 8 years, so her input's great. But I personally think that before we get into serious discussion, or before we actually decide whether or not we're going to leave it the same, whether we're going to change it, whether we're going to throw it out, however, I think we should wait until the new council people take over, and also because they're going to have to deal with the way it's run too, and maybe we should wait. That's just my opinion. I don't vote. Council makes the decision. I only vote whether it's a tie or not. I just think personally that we're only a few meetings away from a new council. I think we should wait until they can be part of the discussion to get their input, their opinions, and they should have a say in whether it stays the same, changes, or whatever. That's just my opinion. So I don't know. It's up to council, because like I say, council will vote on it whether it's now or after the first of the year. I only vote to break a tie. That's all I wanted to say. I think we should wait till the new council is in effect, regardless of what they do. Anybody else have any comments?
Now, if the rest of council wants to do a first reading and continue to discuss the legislation as is, I mean, that's fine. You're not voting on it tonight.
I thought I made a motion to table.
Yeah.
You want to table?
She
Okay.
And I said,
did.
Okay.
Do we need to vote on that motion then?
Yeah,
Did
you
we
need
not
to
do
vote
that?
on the motion.
We need to vote on the motion. We have a second?
Butler?
Take a roll call vote to table the resolution.
Is that what you,
I want to
is
table
that
it
what you
because
want?
because I want to hear what people think, but I don't think anybody realizes.
I second you.
You second to table. So,
I agree with what you're saying. Not in the tabling, but I agree with what you're saying.
okay, so yeah, my motion's still out there to table it, but I'm gonna keep talking about it as long as I'm here. Get rid of it, so. And you can decide what you want to do. I'm fine, but the only issues that we've had, it's never been somebody on the agenda. So if people want to speak, I think that, so I've said, so I'm going to table. Second, let's
Okay,
go.
we had a motion to table, a second, we'll take a vote to table.
And I wanted to hear.
Butler?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jordan?
Yes.
Lipscomb?
Yes.
Oakridge?
Yes.
Thrash?
Yes.
Vincenzo?
Yes.
All members are in favor.
And Jim, can I just say something?
Sure.
You gave your perspective, right? And I can agree with that. However, I also see how many of us have been through many meetings, and we've seen times where we thought people should be allowed to speak. It would have been appreciated if we could hear their statement, their side, their opinion, what have you, but they couldn't because it's so, strict on writing in. So for instance, just tonight, I think it was very valuable to have Mr. Davis here and give us his side, his perspective, those kinds of things. And we were able to let him and he and Tom had a conversation for all intents and purposes where council could ask questions as well. And it gave all of us, it opened up an opportunity to further the understanding, right, of all the different things that Tom's talking about, and then our perspective on the situation. So I can appreciate what you're saying, but if it would become something that doesn't work out with the new council members, it can always be changed again.
Well, yeah, like I
Right.
say, I agree with, like, Mr. That's why
That
I
was
sent-
valuable,
That's why I
feel
sent,
like.
that's why I sent him an email and made sure to invite him to be here. Said Tom was gonna clarify some things and he would very probably, possibly be given an opportunity to discuss this with council.
Yeah.
I just think since the way the charter is, this is my reasoning, the way the charter is, we are strictly legislative, so there's some things we cannot take action. I don't know, I'm not gonna get into whether I'm in favor of it, I got a lot of thoughts both ways, but I just think we should wait for the new council since they're gonna have to deal with the people.
Well, so
that-
it's not always dealing with something. I mean, tonight wasn't really dealing. It
No,
was
no, I'm just-
enlightening and it was
no, I'm
conversation.
just saying, they're
you
gonna
know?
have, the new council is gonna have to
Understand.
be here to interact with the voters and with
Understood.
the people. And I think since they're gonna be in the, so to speak, in the line of fire, that they should be able to have some say in whether it stays the same, whether it changes, or whether it's thrown out altogether, like Beth wants to do. So I'm just thinking, I'm not saying don't change it.
That's all.
I'm
I
just saying,
understand.
yeah.
I just want to say.
Okay, that brings us to the last piece of legislation, which is 2023-31.
And this is up for third and final reading tonight. This is 2023-31. It's the resolution approving tentative agreement between the City of St. Clairsville and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Local 3393, Ohio Council 8, AFL-CIO, and declaring an emergency.
And this needs 4 votes to pass.
This needs, as a third reading, it needs 4, it's just a majority, 4 votes.
Okay, Jacob, you want to read Resolution 2023-31?
Resolution number 2023-31, resolution approving the tentative agreement between City of St. Clairsville and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Local 3393, Ohio Council 8, AFL-CIO, and declaring an emergency.
Okay, this is the third reading, so I need a motion to vote on the resolution.
I make that motion.
Need a second? Take a roll call vote to pass Resolution 2023-31.
Paula?
Yes.
Jordan?
It's not just the rates, it's everything. It's excessive for the taxpayer, so my vote is no.
Lipscomb?
Yes.
Obrich?
I don't think it's excessive. I appreciate everything you guys do. I vote yes.
I appreciate what they do. It's just a lot of
Okay,
ask for the
we're
taxpayers.
ready to move over here, guys.
Sorry.
Thrash?
Yes.
Vincenzo?
Yes.
Warren? 5 in favor, 1 opposed.
Okay, we have 5 votes in favor, 1 opposed to Resolution 2023-31, so the resolution passes. Okay, that's everything on the agenda for this evening. As of right now, the next meeting is Monday, October 16th, 2023 at 7 p.m. here in the council chambers. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. That's meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Meeting.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
You gotta help me build this.
Goes back to your office.